Derrière vous, il suscite des débats passionnés depuis son adoption en 19...
Welcome to the Aporde podcast. In this episode, we explore the role of conflict on the continent of Africa in a year where the African Union has called for the silencing of the guns on the continent. We ask in our discussion, what are the political economy considerations that inform our understanding of key conflicts on our continent, including the conflict in the Tigray region in Ethiopia? How can such an approach help us in understanding the continuing violence through from the Renamo to ISIS in Mozambique and the persistent fears around political mobilization of ethnic violence in intra-class conflicts on the continent? We investigate the economics of conflict and how economic theory, if at all, can assist us, or how political economy can assist us to understand current conflicts on our continent. My name is Ayabonga Cawe, and my guests today are Thomas Selemane and Grieve Chelwa. We start off our discussion in the southern African nation state of Mozambique. Mozambique achieved its independence in 1975, and since then, the national question and the resolution of some of the economic and social challenges of the country have remained rather elusive.
In the center of Mozambique, where a faction of the biggest opposition party, Renamo, has formed a junta in 2 years now, and there is also conflict with armed attacks and killing of people and destruction of public and private infrastructure in the provinces of Manica and Sofala. In fact, that's less spoken and less present issue in the domestic and international media, but it's also a conflict that's going on in Mozambique since 2019. And I was saying that the history of Mozambique, the trajectory of this country since 1977 is important to understand how the political issues and ultimately also the development of the country is understood by the different groups or ethnicities and tribes of Mozambicans in the 11 provinces this country has. People know that the independence of Mozambique from the Portuguese colony was only possible through liberation war. 10 years, it lasted 10 years. And after the independence in 1975, the country could not manage to be united and to build a nation and a state from what existed at the time.
More recently, the conflict has not only been around electoral contests, but has also followed the large investments in minerals and gas, which bring to the center of our discussion the role of the recent violence in the province of Cabo Delgado. The conflict is also indicative of how bizarre the historic drawing of geographical borders has been in Mozambique. In Africa, many of those in Cabo Delgado share close social and cultural ties to East Africa, rather than, say, to Southern Africa or any of the other national groups within the broader Mozambican polity.
The tribes that live in Cabo Delgado are Swahili, and they share the same language, the same culture, and the same traditions with the Tanzanians and some Kenyans. So that part of the country is particular in the anthropological term of being not so much integrated in Mozambique as a nation, but being pretty much close to Tanzania and to that region I have mentioned. So the recruitment of youth by the insurgents, what some call Al-Shabaab. The London meeting, the G7 held 2 days ago, called it Mozambican branch of ISIS. They have different names, although there is no evidence that the Cabo Delgado insurgents is really an army of the international ISIS. There is no such evidence, but people call it that way, call it Al-Shabaab, call it ISIS, and so on. So I was saying that the recruitment of youth to be part of the insurgents in Cabo Delgado has been relatively easy because of that social and economic setup I've explained, but also because of the religion and the language and the culture and the tradition, which is the same as the one of those people who come from South Tanzania and Zanzibar and all that region.
The United Nations says it's deeply concerned by the worsening humanitarian crisis and escalating violence, forcing thousands to flee the Cabo Delgado province in Mozambique. It says this has left communities completely reliant on humanitarian assistance. According to the Mozambique government, attacks by non-state groups have forced more than 560,000 people to flee their homes and villages, abandoning their crops and livelihoods.
We surely can't avoid the gas factor. A big part of why the world has been focused on Cabo Delgado is not unrelated to the presence of Chevron, Total, and many of the other big energy players who have operations in that part of the world.
The gas factor has been an additional element to the social tension Cabo Delgado lives in the last 20 years. Because what has happened with the presence of all these multinationals, Total, Chevron, BP, Anadarko, all those big players from the energy sector who went to Cabo Delgado, was that the government then started to make promises of a better future to everyone in Cabo Delgado, on the one hand, but then on the other hand, those people have no qualifications to get jobs in the gas industry. So what happened is that Mozambicans from other provinces flooded in Cabo Delgado, and they took the jobs, which was obvious because the people from Cabo Delgado had no enough qualifications to be a carpenter, an electrician or plumber, all those basic jobs the gas industry was offering at that time. So the presence of other Mozambicans from other parts of Mozambique outside Cabo Delgado was also a determining factor for the increase of anger among the people of Cabo Delgado.
The conflict, as much as it is economic, is also political. And it's indicative of the challenges faced by liberation movements and the contest within these new nations in the post-colonial period between different regional, ethnic, and other interests.
The fact that the government has been literally refusing help from the region or from other countries like France or Portugal in the last 2.5 years also explains the understanding Mozambican government has of that conflict. Because the point is that for the government perspective, in the government point of view, that conflict is being, let me say, instigated by some Western citizens, some foreigners who do not want to see Mozambique to become a big gas player. But that argument is problematic if we look at the worldwide gas industry. Even with the Cabo Delgado gas operating in its full capacity, Mozambique would not be one of the 10 big gas players in the world. So it is somehow problematic to think that the gas industry is actually determining factor for the insurgents. It has been part of it, but I have problems with the argument that tries to establish a different, a direct link between the existence of that gas project, the insurgents, and the terrorism attacks. As I said, this argument tries to avoid the discussions around what Mozambican state has failed to do to those people in that region before the gas conversation started. In the past 15, 17 years, because the gas conversation has only 4 or 5 years now. But Cabo Delgado, from all the statistics, has been a forgotten province.
The issue of tribalism, it seems, is not the only issue at stake, and there remain major contests around the nature of development and, of course, the role of the state in that pursuit, least of all in Zambia. The other crucial element in responding to the task of state-led growth is also about focusing on the vexing challenge of commodity reliance, which is a key vulnerability of many African economies and certainly contributes to the type of instability and volatility that we see in many of their own exchange rates and in their currencies as well.
The most important thing is, this idea of policy certainty and the idea of clear policy direction. I think it's a really underappreciated aspect of economic planning and economic policy. Just being able to set the tone and say to us, this is what my government will do. This is my government's main objective. We can disagree about those objectives, but at least we know what they are. And I think in the first year, that kind of communication has to be very clear that this is my priority, right? This is, if it is the debt, that is what I'm going to focus on, and I'm going to sort it out this way. If it is unemployment, this is what I'm going to focus on, and I'm going to do it this way. If it is diversification, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do it this way. For me, I think that's the most important thing. Yeah, rather than running, like furiously right now, the most important thing is just clear policy direction. And they started on Monday with that clarity. That's super, super important for everybody. I mean, in the old economics lecture, we will say for foreign investment or whatever. No, it's just very, very important for everybody. We all do planning at the micro level, at the household level, at the personal level. And it's important to have a head of state who's very clear in where he or she is taking the country. So I think that's what I would say. That means it seems like a very ephemeral, intangible thing, but it's very important. Clear policy direction. And then from there, then you move on to the next big thing. I mean, obviously the debt is going to be a big part of his first term, what to do with the debt, right? And then the youth are incredibly expectant. I mean, what tilted the balance in his favor in the last election appears, on the face of it, we have to still look at the numbers quite deeply, appears to have been the youth vote. Huge vote. So the youth are very, very expectant, and the youth are this is a different kind of youth. They're on social media, they're tweeting at him, they're really, really expectant. So I would sequence it in that way, clear policy direction, and then you move on to some other big thing later on. But tell us exactly what that is and communicate very clearly. Yeah.
We're going to have to leave it there, folks, for this episode of the Aporde podcast. Please continue to follow some of our future episodes and some of those that we've had in the past. From myself, Ayabonga Cawe, till we meet again.
Gracias, Jennifer.
suscite des débats passionnés depuis son adoption en 19...